Board. I just want to start off by saying I was just speaking with David earlier. So this morning, this wine here, Boulder Bank, 2019 Boulder Bank, just got runner-up today in the Press Democrat, and it got beat out by. Let me see if I can share my screen. It got beat out by a wine called, I think you can see this, called Ackman from Dry Creek Valley Sauvignon Blanc at $30, and Boulder Bank is here at $16, which I know you guys sell it even cheaper than that, I think. So then next week, you're not allowed to tell anyone, but the Trig Point Chardonnay is going to get Wine of the Week in the Press Democrat. This is the 2018, and this will get Wine of the Week. Peg just called me this morning and told me. And there's basically none available in the North County. There might be, because everyone's on 2017, so you'll be the first one. If you take this on, you'll be the first ones to sell it. And then,
When is that one?
sorry?
When is that one out?
Okay, one of you guys has to turn your microphone off.
Sabrina, everyone should mute except one person at the table.
Yeah, just either Rick or Sabrina leave your computer sound on, because then it's going to be.
When are you going to release the next Trig Point?
The release will be, the release is still going to be about 3-4 months away, but we're going to let you guys have the 18 because it's going to be Wine of the Week if you want.
This is 17. He's talking about the triple.
And then David and Rick also, yesterday I sent the scores from the latest wine enthusiasts that are going to come out in September. So you'll see scores for Yoeman, Game Ranch, and Game Ranch Plus. They only gave Hillary a 90, but you guys know that Hillary got a 93 from Wine Spectator. So anyway, all right. Any other questions before I start? Sheep joke? You want to hear a sheep joke?
Sure.
That's right. I'll get to that later when you guys nod off. All right. So where did my PowerPoint go? Great. Hang on a second. I've got I made a PowerPoint presentation for you guys last night, and here it is. Just have to share my screen.
While you work on that, Nick, you said that Hillary got 93 points where?
Wine Spectator. You didn't see that?
He's talking about the 16.
Yeah, the 16.
Yeah.
And we basically sold out. We sold out of it in like 3 days.
That's why our customers were so mad they couldn't get it anymore.
Well, when it got 93 points from San Francisco Chronicle, it got 93 points from Anthony Diaz Blue, and nobody wanted it. And then it gets so blame your own customers for not stepping up when the wine was around, you know. And tell them that they can have. You better put your money in, put your order in for the 2017, because already we've got like 300-400 cases on order. So people have started buying the 17 already. We haven't even bottled it yet. We're bottling it next week. All right, so we're going to run through the Singing Tree Reserve Chardonnay Dutton, which is a pretty rare wine for us. You guys should all have a tasting sheet, or I will. I can jump back to that in a second, and then we'll roll into a bunch of red wines. So, here's the scores from the wine enthusiasts that are going to come out. So, the Game Ranch Plus is going to get a 92. The Game Ranch Regular got a 90, and the Yoeman got a 90, and the Hillary got a 90, which we don't care about. These are the scores from Anthony Diaz Blue. So, if you want a bunch of scores, this is almost every wine that I taste with him once a year. So he's Som Journal or Tasting Panel, depending on which one you want to use. And anyway, launching into the Chardonnay. So we make 2 Chardonnays. We make the Singing Tree and the Dutton. And just to look at, and you guys know, I usually use these slides for people that don't know the area. So this is the center of the universe, which is where we all live, right? Healdsburg. Sorry about that, Paula. We ignore Sacramento. The Dutton comes from the Green Valley region, which is the coldest part of the Russian River. And the Singing Tree and Fog's Edge, I don't know if you have the Fogs, they come from down here in Sebastopol. This is Randy Peters' vineyard. Randy Peters owns, he's a part owner in Kokomo. And of course, you know Dutton because actually Warren Dutton was a very good friend of mine. He obviously passed away and his two sons run it, and he used to sell the grapes to us at Simi. And as Dave Ramey, if you know Dave Ramey, bought Westside Farms, so he's gradually pulling out of Dutton and I'm gradually taking over Dutton. So Dutton will be a wine that I'll continue to increase, but from different vineyards. So this is the one on Poplar Street. If you know Poplar Street, it's just one street south of Grayton. We don't need to go into the map, but basically, yeah, let's not do that.
These are the singing trees at our house. They are full of small birds and they are incredibly loud.
So the birds squawk like crazy. So instead of calling the squawking tree, we'll call it the singing tree. Running quickly through this, none of these Chardonnays that we make are from clones. No Dijon clones, no UCD clones, no Espaget clones, which are the Italians. These are all field selections. These field selections or mass selections were selections that were taken back in the 60s and 70s, and they were selected for particular attributes. What we primarily work with is C, S-E-E. C selection, field selection, tends to be a little bit more melon and passion fruit would be the ways to describe it. And I'll show you a little bit of a graph of that in a minute. The reason why, and it's still on AXR1, both these vineyards, and the reason why is because they're on a Goldridge sandy loam. And so Goldridge sandy loam, there's three main soils in the Russian River, the Huacheca, the Goldridge, and the Franciscan. And the Goldridge does not have very much organic matter, so the phylloxera can't live in it. The regular singing tree, we ferment about 40% in concrete. But for both wines, we do very limited malolactic. I let the ML run through about January, February. And then when the ML, when it gets cold, basically the bacteria dies. So I don't push it. And then all these wines are vegan. So they're one vineyard, one vintage, one variety, and they're all vegan. This is the Goldridge Sandy Loam for one hasn't seen it. It's very powdery. This is a classic cluster for field selection where you got big berries and small berries in the same cluster. And Dutton obviously is an old vine. So we don't talk about we talk about old vine Zinfandel, sometimes old vine Cabernet, but in this instance, we're talking about old vine Chardonnay as well. The differences between a mass selection or field selection and a clone is the field selection tend to have smaller berries, smaller yields, and better balance primarily because they're smaller vines. When they created clones, because they had to change the rootstock and AXR1 was no longer compatible with the new clones, that's why with the new plant material, that's why they came up with clones. Because AXR1 was related to these field selections. When we had to get rid of AXR1 and use the new rootstocks, these field selections started to show virus, leaf roll, leaf curl, stem pitting, cork. So that's when we created clones and we put clones on top, and these things were more compatible. We got rid of the virus, but it was what the virus was what was giving us the differences in flavor. And that's why today all Chardonnay tastes the same. That's why if I hear another white peach Chardonnay, I'm going to spit. I've had enough of it. So, and these clones were categorized for one reason: yield, and yield in combination with sugar. So they're very fast accumulators of sugar. And as a field selection, we're not interested in that. We're interested in flavor. So if we were to graph warm fruit, if you can see this chart here, pineapple would be the highest warm fruit, down to grassy. Some of these field selections we had were like Spring Mountain and Rude with pineapple. C was Wente. Stone fruit was like, C. Wente would be like stone fruit, Bateau, Mount Eden, and Calera. So we had names for all these old field selections.
Nick?
Today.
Nick?
Zach? Yeah.
What's the difference between a stone fruit and a pip fruit?
Peaches and nectarines versus pip, apple, and pear.
Thank you.
So today when we talk about clones, all the clones usually fit in the stone fruit, pip fruit realm. A little bit of texture, a little bit of structure. I mean, everything's lukewarm. no one's making a statement anymore on Chardonnay. The Singing Tree Chardonnay, which we won't talk about today, also comes from C, and it has a little bit more of this melon and has a bit more structure, because I'm a more of a white Burgundy, I'm a Chablis kind of fan. And then if we put Dutton on here, when you drink the Dutton's going to be a lot more textural. So it's going to hit this sort of subtropical pineapple character. I love this wine, by the way. I drink a lot of it. So quite stylistically different to what you get from, you know, your regular run-of-the-mill Chardonnays. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
Getting Chardonnay out here in the Russian River today. The guys are sorting through it. Beautiful, beautiful little vineyard. We're just wrapping up here, and should get this fruit into the vineyard at the winery in the next hour or so. It'll be fantastic. This is some of the best Chardonnay that we make, and you can see we've got big berries and small berries going in the same cluster. And this is what mass selection Chardonnay is all about. It's beautiful, beautiful fruit.
Okay, well, let's keep rolling. I'm not going to talk, we can talk all day about malolactic, but I don't want to do that. But basically,
Question.
Yeah.
How old are the vines?
The vines were planted back in the 70s, I think 1973. So this wine normally retails at about 48 to 50 bucks. And I think today you've got it for about $40. Rick and Dave have got the price sheet, so ignore what I say during this conversation. All right, the next three, we're going to talk about Chelsea Merlot next. So these are the three daughter wines. Obviously, Katherine is the big seller. You guys know that. And you'll notice that Katherine faces a different direction to the other two young girls, because Catherine's the middle daughter. She's the liar, the manipulator, the bullshit artist, thinks outside the box, so she faces to the right. The other two girls are much more normal and face to the left. And there's a whole story about this. When Chelsea was 2, I traced her around the head and she colored it in. That's where the label comes from. And the kids started making wine with me back in 2002, because when I was telling my children how we made wine in Chile without electricity, because Pinochet would sometimes cut off the electricity, he'd cut off food, he'd cut off oil, whatever his will was. So making wine without power. So we started making wine together. We made 1 barrel the first year. We called it 5 Gold Hands Unplugged, because we don't use any electricity. And then the birth order is really important. I went to, I got a call from Yoeman once, and all I hear is, honey, I'm too drunk. I can't go to the parent-teacher night. So I ended up going to the parent-teacher night, but it turned out to be a game changer. And they broke the room up on first, second, third, twins, and lastborn. I'm a firstborn. Everyone sits at the table. Firstborns never make eye contact with anyone. I had to learn how to do this. There's a piece of paper. We answer all the questions. And at the bottom, it says elect a spokesperson for the group. What do firstborns do? You wait 20 seconds. I put my hand up at exactly the same time as the other 13 firstborns. The secondborns are like, can we get a firstborn over here? The thirdborns are like, what was the question? Because you know what middle children are like, they're all still talking about themselves. And the lastborns are like, we ordered a cheeseburger, we don't even know why we're here. So that's why the labels look like this. Anyway, we're going to talk about Chelsea today. We make 2, just so you're aware. We're going to be talking about the Guidestone Rise today, which is the one from the Alexander Valley. This is the Alexander Valley. The Nick Goldschmidt interpretation is that Fitch Mountain here makes Alexander Valley look like a Y. So this is 101. You've got the Russian River here. It goes around Fitch Mountain. Obviously, we're sitting here. I'm sitting here right now. That's my house out in Dry Creek. But we've got this side of the valley and this side of the valley, and the rest goes straight up. So Geyserville's like the middle of the Y, upside down Y. And so the Chelsea Merlot comes from just east of Geyserville. It's a vineyard that I've been working on for many years. It used to be, don't tell anyone, but it used to be the Milestone. The piece used to go into Milestone. The Merlot from Milestone for Clos de Bois, which used to sell for 65 bucks. The Katherine is further down here. This used to be semi-reserve Cabernet that sold for 75 bucks. And so same winemaker, same vineyard for both of these. And then the Yoeman sits above Katherine, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And Fidelity Vineyard is just north of Geyserville. Some of you have seen that vineyard. It's the one just north of the Hoffman House. So if you know the Hoffman House in Geyserville, it's the vineyard right around Hoffman House. Staircase is the new vineyard that we're developing right now. This is my most expensive and most fascinating and most intriguing and most unbelievable property. I'd love to take you guys up there when we can and show you what we're doing. And then Forefathers comes a little bit from the further north. These are my 5 children. This is Kate, Hillary and Chelsea. This is in the Chelsea Merlot Vineyard, Dry Creek. So again, single vineyard, single varietal, single vintage, 100% barrel, 20% new. And yes, it is vegan, just like all the other ones. It got 96 points and a double gold, actually, the 2017 did. You guys are tasting the 2018 today.
G'day, Nick Goldschmidt here. I'm standing out here in the Chelsea Merlot Vineyard, Alexander Valley, and we are about, 70-80% through Veraison. If you can see down here, if I move a few clusters, leaves, you can see that we're colouring up quite nicely. A little way to go. This is the second week of September that we're looking about in terms of harvest, and that would be about right on average. So looking good. We love the soil here, a lot of good water holding capacity. We've got a long way to go in terms of holding this canopy on, but we're in really good shape and really excited about the 2019 Chelsea Goldschmidt Alexander Valley Merlot out here in the Alexander Valley. Beautiful, love it.
You look taller on TV.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chelsea Goldschmidt, and after my workouts, I always crave a nice glass of Merlot. So, I'm obviously drinking my favorite Merlot, the Chelsea Goldschmidt. This one is 2017 from Alexander Valley. Reminds me of back home in Sonoma County while I'm here in isolation in the Bay Area. So, let's see how it is. It's the perfect wine for isolation. Drink by yourself, or if you need a glass after spending the day with your family, it's always there. So let's see how it is. It smells like black cherry and pomegranate and chocolate. Yum. And it tastes like strawberries and plum. It's delicious. I hope you really enjoy it, and I hope it keeps you company in your quarantine. Stay safe, everyone. Cheers.
Yeah, so she sent me that out of the blue. It was pretty funny. So they're down in San Leandro, and they're in a very small apartment. So yeah, they need whatever. But the key thing about the vineyard is the soil, because Merlot weighs 1.2 grams, Cabernet weighs 0.9 grams, and so you don't want to dehydrate it, and so because otherwise you just concentrate sugar, acid, and tannin. Whereas I want to bring that Merlot into the winery and extract the hell out of it. So this is a Cabernet drinker's Merlot, a lot fuller and richer, and obviously with less alcohol. Because if you don't, the right bank, Pomerol is still all Merlot, Aubryon, Petrus. People drink more Merlot, they just don't know they're drinking Merlot. And still the #1 red grape in the world. And if you think about green characters, the greenest variety is Cabernet, obviously from Chile, Sauvignon Blanc, and then Cabernet Sauvignon. If you don't like green characters, drink Merlot. Because if you don't like green Cabernet, you've got to pick it at super high alcohol. And we don't like to do that. All right, let's jump to the Fidelity Red Blend. Any questions?
Do you own all these vineyards?
No. We own about 20% of our vineyards. So we own vineyards in New Zealand and Chile. We own 2 vineyards in New Zealand, 1 vineyard in Chile, and 1 in Argentina. And then we own 3 vineyards in the Alexander Valley, and then I lease 2 vineyards over in Napa, in Oakville. But the rest of the grapes I buy on the spot market. So a lot of Katherine is really tricky, because Katherine is made up of 5 vineyards, because it used to be 1 property, but then it got sold to another guy, and then that guy sold it to 3 more. So we still take all the fruit from that 1 property, but now it's owned by 5 owners. The Fidelity wines we own, because that's the vineyard right around Hoffman House, as I said. So this is a really unique wine. It's, people always ask me what the blend is and why we don't put the blend on the front, because if we put the blend on the front, I have to re-register it in about 10 states every year if I change the percentages by 1%. It's a pain in the neck. So we call it a red wine now, but it is 100% Bordeaux, and that's a really important distinction, because most red blends today either have Zinfandel in them or, more importantly, Syrah. So when people just, hey, what happened to all the Syrah in the world? Well, guess what? It ends up in red blends. It just didn't get pulled out all of a sudden. The other thing that to be really quick about it is, if people ask what the blend is, I just say, you know what, it's 85% Cabernet and Merlot. And the other 15% is made up of Cab Franc and Petit Verdot. What I am going to do, though, going forward is I am going to gradually increase the Petit. I planted more Petit Verdot on the staircase vineyard, and so I will use that. The Fidelity wines, the 2 Fidelity wines, are the only blends we make. Although we make another one called Conspirator from Oakville, which I don't think you guys know about. But so this is a blend, and the Zinfandel that we also make is also a blend. The Zinfandel can have up to 10% Petit Syrah in it, usually 7% Petit Syrah. But anyway, so the big thing is about the story. So in the year 2000, I got a call from Al Delormier from, he used to own the Delormier winery, Mosaic, etc. And he said, Nick, I'm going to go bankrupt. I said, well, why? What happened? He goes, well, I've sold the winery to an NBA player. I don't know if you remember this. There was a hiatus before the Wilsons bought it. And he'd been paid for the winery, but he had not been paid for the grapes for 3 years. And so I went up, and Don Fraser, thank you, had made all the wine. And I tasted the 2001 and the 2, and I said, let's just pump them all together. So we had 3 wines. I called up my buddy who was a little retailer called Sam's Club Walmart, Bob. I won't tell you his last name, get him in trouble. So Bob goes, all right, I'll take 10,000 cases of the 3 wines over the 3 years. And we launched it on Valentine's Day. We called it Fidelity. We put a heart on the label. He calls me back 2 years later and says, Nick, I don't want to sell the brand anymore. I said, dude, you've still got 500 cases left, and I still work for LVMH Constellation. I can't be running around selling this stuff. So anyway, I called up my mates who are distributors in Massachusetts, Indiana, and New Jersey. They agreed to take the last 500 cases. The next day, 92 points Best Buy Wine Enthusiast. Bob calls me up and says, can I get my wine back? So today, there's a broken heart on the label. And that broken heart represents the screw you to Sam's Club, Walmart, Costco, Total Beverage, and all the other big national chains that are screwing up the small family business. And this is why it's at Grove Street.
Amen, brother.
So these are the key elements. As I said, there's no Syrah. This is all Bordeaux. And as I said, the goal is to have Petit Verdot sort of be the main third piece. But it'll be a couple of 3 years before I get that to happen. But really, I mean, this is, if you're getting a bad karma from someone on the phone, man, you just go to this. You just go to this. I mean, it's black fruit. It's easy to drink. It's round. I mean, it's everything you want. And Dave, Ricky, you got the price there in front of you?
$18.
$18. Yeah, it's normally 24, 25 bucks, something like that. So that'll be $18 for you. And what about the Zinfandel? What's that going to be at?
Close to the same.
Oh.
20.
Yeah, 20. It should be slightly more expensive for the Zinfandel. So the Zinfandel last year got a 92 in the Spectator. That was for the 18. That's this one. I've already told you the story about the label. The property, though, was pretty interesting. It was one of those things, the property went on the market and we bought it in the afternoon, and Pete Segasio called me up and said, Nick, do you know what you bought? I said, no. Because I just taken my severance from Constellation, so I spent it on this vineyard.
Are we on the Zin now?
Yeah, you can go into the Zin. This is the 19. You're the first people to try it, so I hope you like it. I love it. And Pete goes, oh, you bought the base for my reserve Zin, and you bought my single vineyard Petit. So I said, all right, I'll sell you the fruit. And anyway, it didn't work out. Long story. I ended up making the wine myself, and this is the resulting blend. And the Zinfandel has become, we make probably 1,500 cases of it, and man, it's unreal. I mean, we ran out of the 18 about 3-4 months ago, and so this is the 19, which we bottled about a month ago now, and we're just starting to release it now. So, but I find the 19, like the 18, I thought it was too opulent, too red fruit, too jammy, too raspberry, too whatever, and then it just got all this huge press. So it's quite. The other thing is that you can have 2 glasses without falling over, right? So this is a Zinfandel it's usually it's under 15 anyway. Let me make sure. Oh yeah, it's under 15. This one's labeled 14.9, but I can tell you it's 14.5.
14.9. It's really 14.
So it's older. I say oldish because I asked, because we all argue about what the hell an old vine means. And Doug Raffinelli was on, he and I were doing a seminar on Zinfandel about 3 years ago, and Doug goes, the definition of an old vine is 75 years. I said, no, that's not true, mate. Any vine that's over 30, because that's the commercial lifespan of a, and when you're in a corporate world, 30 years is max, because then they rip everything out. But I make a wine, I don't know if you guys have a Giardamella, which is the 120-year-old Zinfandel. That's, you know, they put the fence line right through the Passalacqua Sagacio property, and Pete makes the San Lorenzo, and we make Giardamella Reserve. So those are super, super old vines. Anyway, these again were planted in the 70s, both the Zin and the Petite. It's still on the St. George rootstock. And it was planted by the Pratties, and we bought it from the Pratties. So they owned like a whole bunch of land back in the right after Prohibition. The Pratties started buying a lot of land. Anyway, it's an old field selection grown on St. George. And then in the 80s, they threw up a couple of wires. So instead of it being a California sprawl now, it actually has we put some wires in there. We can actually open up the canopy a little bit more, so we can get some light and some air through. Basically, I pick around alcohol because Zinfandel is notorious for increasing sugar once it's crushed. So because it has so many raisins in it, when you crush it and you check the sugar, let's say you get 24 bricks. The next day you go back, what's happened is the juice is swelled up those raisins, and those raisins have released the sugar, and the sugar goes up. You know, normally you find the sugar goes down, but with Zinfandel it goes up. So, so I'm really focused on trying to keep that alcohol low. And here's a little video for you.
Good morning, everybody. I am standing at the Rail Yard Zinfandel property. A little foggy here today, a little overcast. Perfect for Zin to slow up, which is great. So let's zoom in here a little bit. We can see a classic raisiny Zin, and then less so for the rest of the clusters. So I'm going to wait a little bit longer here. We still don't have good separation between skin and pulp. Leaves are in good condition. We can wait a little bit more for the rachis to lignify a little bit more, so I'm going to hang out for a little bit more. We don't cultivate every row, even though I'd like to do a permanent cover on every row, because I think it gives more organic matter and allows for water to penetrate in, allows us to get in if there is a little bit of rain. But at the same time, we need to disc it and turn it in. So that's why that row over there is disked and this one is not. And we will switch it out next year. Anyway, beautiful vineyard. Love being out here at the Rail Yard Vineyard in the Alexander Valley, where we have Zinfandel and Petite Sirah today. Just looking at the Zin, beautiful.
Yeah, it's again, that soil is really good because it's got good water holder capacity. And you'll also notice under the vine that there was weeds. And that's because I'm a big anti-herbicide guy. My second degree is in organics and biodynamics. I don't believe organic is good, but what I do believe is that in discussing organics and biodynamics, it gets people into the vineyards, into the fields, and discussing this in a healthy manner. Whereas I think blanket, herbicide is terrible. So anyway, hopefully one day they'll eliminate Roundup completely. Right, this is the Trig Point. This is the vineyard. This is rich Passalacqua. Okay, so we make a number of wines from this property. This is where I'm throwing my cursor now. This is the Cabernet. This is the Merlot here. Okay, we take all that Merlot. And believe it or not, over here, you're now in the Russian River, and this is the Chardonnay. So we make Chardonnay from the Russian River, even though it's on the same property. That block there that you see, that's the 170-year-old Zinfandel that I was talking about earlier. And then all the rest of this vineyard is Zinfandel, and all goes to Sagacio. This is Pete Sagacio's house right there. And this is Fred Passalacqua's house. This is Fred Passalacqua's property right here. All right, so, well, you know where it is. I don't need to go over that. These are the labels that we make. So we call the vineyard Diamond Dust because my father was a land surveyor, and this is a paper road. So originally in the 1700s and whatever, they used to draw maps of the county, and they'd put roads on the map where they thought it was useful. Well, when they get out there, of course, the land is too steep and they can't put a road in. So there are these things called paper roads all around the place, and Diamond Dust is a paper road. It was never actually built, but it's still owned by the county. The Chardonnay we call Signpost, and this is the one that got Wine of the Week next week in the Press Democrat, and that's the reason why it says Signpost. The original ones have fallen down, so it's got Foppiano, Mazzoni, Passalacqua, Sagacio, you know. Anyway, there's every family you can imagine is all. If you end in a vowel, you're probably welcome. All right, what is a trig? So a trig is, this is what a trig is. In fact, I built this one. My brother and I built this one when we were in our teens. My father, being a land surveyor, they need to find 2 points of reference to determine property lines, and so we would build these things. Under the square here, we would drop a plumb bob, and on the ground here, we would drive a metal spike into the ground because the metal spike didn't move. And so when they were taking a sight from right out here, they could sight onto the top of this, and that would give them the angle and the distance. And then they'd have one point where they were, and then they could work out distances using trigonometry. You okay with all that? Sines and cosines and all that shit, you remember? Anyway, I could go on all day about that, but anyway, that's what a trig is. So the trig is a point of reference. So what is it? You know, so we make Trig Point Cabernet. Okay, it's Alexander Valley, one of the best vineyards. So this is a point of reference for Cabernet. This is my father. He was the 4th guy to the South Pole in 1958. He went to the South Pole. This is my father then, and this is my father in 1958, 1959. There was 8 of them went down. 3 of them were killed, went down a crevasse. And this is my father in 2018, of course, now using GPS and prisms rather than, but it's the same, it's not the same theodolite, but it's the same brand. So pretty interesting. I don't need to talk too much about this. Let's just jump through. So what I do is, this is a drone shot you're looking at now. So you can see this vineyard, part of the vineyard is really vigorous and it has low crop. And so the ripening characteristics are quite different. So because it's undercropped and over canopied, this wine tends to be much more dense and more powerful and rich. And as we come around here, you'll see the vines are more in balance here. So this is where we make the powerful wine in the middle of the tongue. And then as we get over here where the canopy is thinner and the crop is heavier, out of balance, we have to drop more crop. And so this is the area that we make the elegant wines. So the elegant wines are the soft berry fruit wines up in front of the tongue. The powerful wines are the rich wines in the middle of the tongue. And the dense wines provide the structure and the finish. And so even though this is all one vineyard, it can make a really complex wine because you've got 3 very dramatically different areas of the vineyard. And so this is why we have a range in hang times from 125 days, from 100 to 145 days. This is the period of time from bloom to harvest. If you go on my YouTube channel, you can see a lot of these charts. There's about 50 of them. I can send you some of the links if you'd like. We don't add any additives. We leave the wines on skins for 3 weeks. When you drink any male red wines, you will not see any crusty stuff here. You know how wines go from purple to red to brown to orange, especially at Costco's warehouse? Ours don't throw any crusty stuff. Our wines will go purple to red, but they won't go brown or orange, not in my lifetime anyway. So I figured out a way to control that. It's called polymeric pigment, because that's crusty stuff that's falling out. It's polymeric pigment. It's flavor, tannin, and color. Dude, what's left? So unless it's your birth year, the year you got married, the year your first child, the year you got divorced, whatever it is, get rid of it. Move on. Because when you take that wine down to the bunker, when Kim Jong-un drops a nuclear bomb on the bunker, on California, we all run to the bunker and you show up with your bottle with the crusty stuff in it. Ain't happening, babe. I'm going to be down there for 15, 20 years. I want to drink something that's going to stay alive. And this is why I thought it was funny. The Wine Enthusiast came out with the 40 best winemakers under 40 years old. They're exactly the wines I'm not taking to the bunker. How do I know if they're going to live more than 5 years? I rest my case. Anyway, I do go on. So anyway, there are a bunch of graphs that I can do for you guys.
Good morning. Actually, it's the afternoon. What am I talking about? Out here checking on Trig Cabernet. We're getting very close to harvest. We can see that the leaves are sort of lightening up a little bit. Don't know if I want to walk all the way back up the steep hill, which I've just done. But nice loose clusters, looking good, nice and even ripening. We are irrigating a little bit here today because this vineyard is on a very steep hill, and you'll notice that the time is 2 o'clock and the shadow is directly over the vine, which is really, really cool, which is exactly what we want, because at this time of the year it's this is the hottest part of the day, whereas on August 15 at 3 p.m. it's in the same condition. So that's what I look for. But beautiful vineyard, nice and old, planted in 1990, and this is where we make Trig Cabernet from. Phenomenal wine, nice small berry, highly intense. Awesome, awesome. Love working here.
So we don't sell Trig Cabernet. That's sold by another company called Sorting Table. So we make the wine for them. It's our trademark. But because you guys, you're not tied into Goldschmidt vineyards at all, so you can sell whatever you want. So that's one of the trinkets that's really come along. But we have a couple of others too called. Sorry.
Is that 100% Cabernet?
Everything is 100% Cab. Yep. We have a couple of others that you may have seen in the past, Embankment and Herald are another couple. And then we started making some from Oakville as well. We can talk about them at the end if we have some time. All right, let's look at Yardstick. So the name, everything in my life is a story, and it's usually about mathematical or whatever. So Yardstick, if you guys remember, the only two imperialistic nations left in the world are the Brits and the Americans. And they can't even agree on the same size of a gallon. So a British gallon is 4.54 and an American gallon is 3.82. So the Brits and Americans got together and they sent the satellite out to Mars, and it arrived within 100 feet of Mars and disappeared off the radar. And the British called the Americans up and said, I thought you were talking left-hand thread. The Americans said, I thought you were talking metric. It was a $1.2 billion hole that now sits in Mars. I think that's where the latest rover landed or something. I don't know. Anyway. So yard is a point of reference. It's 3 feet. And so just as we consider Napa Valley passe for Cabernet, so is a yard. We don't use yard anymore, and I get sick of people referring to Napa Valley as the home of Cab. But anyway, we make this wine, and it's called Ruth's Reach, and Ruth is the name of my sister. And we were brought up in a very strict British family, and even though we lived in New Zealand. If you were sitting at the dinner table, you know, your fork is always in your left, your knife is in the right. When you hold them, you're not allowed to have either one sticking out the side. It had to be buried in the palm of your hand. Your fingers were not allowed to be on the blade or either one. The water glass was always above the fork. The wine glass was always above the knife. You were never allowed to ask for anything. People had to notice that you wanted some more salad or whatever, but not my sister. She would just reach across the table. So that's where the name comes from. People think it's to do with water, but no, it's a mockery of my sister. Anyway, and you know, the other day she called me. She goes, "What's my name got to do with Yardstick?" I said, "Oh no, we just thought it was a cute name. I never actually told her because it was about her." All right, so the vineyard is in Yountville. So this is being recorded so you can use it, but don't use this as a selling point. But the way back when Chandon couldn't sell Pinot Noir, believe it or not, back in the mid-90s, you couldn't give Pinot Noir away. And so they pulled out the Pinot Noir around Chandon and they planted Cabernet and they planted it for Simi because Chandon and Simi were the same company, were both owned by Louis Vuitton. So when you drive into Chandon, the first 10, 20 rows, I can't remember, are Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, and the next 500 are Cabernet. And so it's in Yountville. So it's a little bit cooler than Oakville. So, you know, Mount St. Helena, in the morning, the sun comes up, it shines on Mount St. Helena and pulls the fog up the Napa Valley. So the fog gets to Yountville before it gets to Oakville and Rutherford and St. Helena and Calistoga, right? So Yountville's a little bit cooler. I would consider it to be the extreme. I'm not a big believer in Oak Knoll. I think Oak Knoll is okay for Merlot, but not for Cab. But Yountville is kind of the max for me. I wouldn't want to go further south. So you get better acidity. For me, it's more flavor profile related to what Alexander Valley would be. So if you think of Alexander Valley as being sort of red cherry, blueberry, black cherry, And because Alexander Valley is cooler than Napa, you get a little bit more acidity. Well, spring that over into Yountville and you get the kind of the same reaction. So the Yountville appellation holds its acidity a little bit better too. So it's, man, I love this wine. And it normally sells, I don't know, $35 normally. I got 30 on there, but normally $35. So just as Fidelity as you go to easy sell, if you want to do one from Napa, this is your easy sell. This is just, I don't know, you're drinking it right now, you tell me, but I had a bottle of this last night. It's just black, fruit powerful. I mean, we're in the business of selling fruit, man. We're not here to sell wood, acid, and tannin. We're here to sell fruit. And to me, that's what this wine is. It's round, it's lush. I think you guys have got the 17 or you got the 18?
17.
17. We've got, I can tell you, we've got 110 cases of the 17 left. The 18 is already bottled. And so it'll be right in behind. But the 17 and 8, you know, there's like splitting hairs. They're both great vintages, as you know. All right. Sorry, we've got 12 minutes left. 2 wines. So the first wine I ever did with my big boy pants on was Forefathers. So I'm on a plane when LVMH gave me, you know, everyone gets a break in their life. My break happened in 1992. LVMH made me the still wine blender for the world. So I looked after Cloudy Bay in New Zealand, Cape Mantel in Australia, Ruffino in Italy, Terrasses in Argentina. In fact, Terrasses, I was the winemaker in Argentina, and then Roses in Portugal. So I was 28 years old and I was seeing the world. It was incredible. But anyway, I got this thing. Why am I going to Cloudy Bay to make Cabernet, Chardonnay, Merlot, Sauvignon Blanc, Riesling, when everybody thinks Sauvignon Blanc, Marlborough? When you think Shiraz, for me, McLaren Vale, Australia. When you think Malbec, for me, it's Uco Valley, Argentina. And that was the wine we were going to do today. When I get it back in stock, I really want you guys to try this. This is my high altitude Malbec from Argentina. It's at 6,000 feet. So I've skied this vineyard and we'll get a bottle over to you, but it's fantastic. And it's 100% Malbec. There's no Cot, which is another clone of Malbec, and no Bonarda, which is often used for color. Anyway, so I'm like, and then Cabernet from California. So Forefathers means the forefather appellation or the best appellation for that variety in the New World. And I often, people are, well, you know, like, when did you last have a really good bottle of New Zealand Cabernet? Well, that would be never, because it doesn't exist. So this is the wine. On the label, so Forefathers, this is before Layer Cake, Cupcake, and all the other bloody cakes that came out and did the international things. We were first. Forefathers was first. And it's still one vineyard, one vintage, one variety, not blended. Pair of boots that I used to wear when I walked around Simi. If you squint, people think it looks like a ship, but no, it's a pair of boots. Maybe I'll make them a bit darker. And then when I became an American citizen, I wrote my own constitution about fish-friendly farming, organics and biodynamics, and responsibility to the family. And then I took John Hancock's signature I stole from the Constitution. I changed it to my own and put it on the label. And Lone Tree is the name of the vineyard. The other wine that you have is the Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand, which is called Waxeye, and that's the name of the bird that eats all the grapes. This is the Cabernet. We only make about 250, 300 cases of this wine. Man, it's awesome. And this just got, this is the 2017, and we have 40 cases left, and then we'll be into the 18. Key things, dry farmed, just like my vineyard in Chile, dry farm. So dry farming means really, really small berry, high skin to pulp ratio. East facing. In fact, all of our vineyards are east facing, east, southeast. East facing is really important. I learned that with Pinot Noir because morning sun. I don't want afternoon sun. That's why that shadow that we looked at is really important to have it directly overhead on August 15 at 3 p.m. I always remember that because it's my wife's birthday, by the way. So, and then because of that, we get tiny yields and we get a late start because it's above the fog line, because this vineyard is at 800 feet. I know it's not very high when you talk about Uco Valley's 6,000 feet, but 800 feet is pretty high for Alexander Valley. And then it's black. The day we crush the grapes into the tank, it's black. It's incredible. This is a picture of the vineyard. So if you get off at Dutcher Creek, go into, I like talking to you guys because you guys know where everything is. You get off at Dutcher Creek, you go under the freeway, and then you head south. This piece in here is not that's actually Zinfandel. The Cabernet starts here. I'll show you a little video in a second. So you see how small the clusters are. That's how tiny. There is nothing. And then this is a dry farmed Cabernet berry and an irrigated Cabernet berry. So you can see the difference in skin to pulp ratio. This is looking down the vineyard. You can see the fog in the valley. And believe it or not, we are in more sunshine up here. You can see the fog settles down in the valley, and actually the Lone Tree Vineyard then speeds up. It actually catches up in maturity because the fog doesn't affect us in the mornings as much.
There are so many things I love about the Lone Tree Vineyard, Alexander Valley Cabernet. I don't know where to begin. Anyway, I've done videos on this before, but just another beautiful day out here in the valley and looking at close to harvest. Today is September 14th. So the things that make this vineyard great are obviously the soil. It's a red soil, I don't know if you can tell, and it has these stones throughout it, but it has at the same time this water holding capacity, which is important for Cabernet. We do not irrigate this vineyard, even though we have a drip line. We ran out of water years ago, but you can see that the vines are still in pretty good condition. And then when you look at the vine, you'd say, you know what, it's pretty heavily cropped. Well, actually it's not. We have quite a few clusters, but the clusters are really small and really loose. Let's just look at one, for instance. So they're very loose. A lot of Cabernet clusters can be tighter than this. The other thing that's really cool is the size of the berry. That berry is probably about 0.8 grams. So most Cabernet is about 0.95 grams. That one's about 0.8. So a lot smaller, and you can imagine the skin to pulp ratio is much different. Now that berry is not ripe for a number of reasons. Number one, it's split in the back when I squeezed it, so there's not separation from the pulp and the skin yet, and you can also see that the seed is relatively green still in there. What else I like about it is just these vines are just naturally balanced, and even though it's dry farm, we can feel the leaf. The leaf to me still has good turgor in it, and it's still relatively cool. So even though we're in the morning here, we have a little way to go in the day, but these leaves are in really good condition. I'll be able to take this fruit through. I'm thinking this fruit right now is about 22 to 23 bricks, and I've just tested it, and I'll be taking it back to the lab to check it formally rather than just using my palate. Anyway, another beautiful day out here in the Alexander Valley, northernmost vineyard that I have. We're up here at 800 feet, and just an awesome vineyard, the Lone Tree Cabernet Vineyard in the Alexander Valley.
Any questions, guys?
Is this one of the vineyards that you own?
No, that's a vineyard, but it's a vineyard I've been working on for 30 years. I feel like I own it.
Is that cash price or?
And what's the price on that, Dave?
156?
26 retail, is that right, about?
No, it should be 55 or 60.
Okay, I had it wrong. Yeah, 55, that's it.
55, yeah. So normally that wine would sell at $60. As I said, it's really limited production, etc. Okay, so then we make, so the 6 wines, my top 6 wines are Forefathers Cabernet, Game Ranch and Yoeman that you see here, Game Ranch and Yoeman Plus, and then I have another wine called Ultimatum. Well, I've never shown you guys Ultimatum. It looks like this. This is the Ultimatum. It's a wraparound label. This is $500 a bottle. So anyway, these two guys, we started off selling these 2 wines exactly the same. It started because of the Sommelier Summit in 2001. We invited 72 sommeliers to see me for 3 days. It was a soil and wine tasting, and we did these massive tastings. And basically, my conclusion was that no one could tell the difference between Cabernet and Merlot, let alone the difference between Napa Valley and Alexander Valley. And I can tell you the story, and I've told this 100 times. Because when we unveil, anyway. So I started making these 2 wines exactly the same. Now, these 2 vineyards are really, really unique. This is not something that you can just go out and purchase. So the vineyard that represents Yoeman sits above the Katherine vineyard. It's only 3 acres. It's an old terrace. It was planted in the 60s. And then the Game Ranch is the vineyard directly opposite Plumpjack, and it's the only knoll that sits in the Oakville region. Both vineyards face east to southeast. The reason why I say that is because Yoeman is a terraced vineyard, so it wraps around, whereas Game Ranch is actually east-northeast. Yoeman is east-southeast. So that's about the only difference is I put them in the same oak, they're on the skins for the same amount of time, I bottle them on the same day, etc., etc. The current vintages are 2016. We talked about the Alexander Valley before, but the Yoeman, this is the Yoeman vineyard here. It is this old terrace that wraps around. I'll show you. Look, we're only talking about Yoeman today. This barn here was burnt down during the fires of last year. And this vineyard block up here I used for another project. And the Katherine vineyard is down here. So it sits right above Katherine. This is the valley that we talk about. So this is Geysers Road and Red Winery Road, if you guys know where that is. If you know where Garden Creek Winery is, that valley opposite Garden Creek, if you cross that road, it's owned by the Five Guys. And so that's who we buy the wine from. There it is.
Yoeman, Alexander Valley Cabernet. Look at the age of that vine. Fantastic, spectacular. Look at that soil. Little gravelly, little loamy, and look at those clusters. Open, loose, and that's the definition, I hope, or that's what I look at when I consider good Cabernet. You know, these loose clusters means that these berries get sunlight all around them, and they're loose because this is an old mass selection. We call this the Jenkins selection, so it's not a clone, and it's on rootstock that was planted before phylloxera, but luckily they didn't use AXR1. So these vines are well over 30 years old now, and we've been making Yoeman from this vineyard since the first time in 1998 was the first ever vintage. The other thing that's really cool is the size of the berries. They're nice and small. We can see that we've got good lignification here now, so we're almost close to harvest. The other thing I like about it is cane pruned. So this is last year's wood, and so these shoots are well spaced. We don't get the spur positions like many vineyards do. They do spur pruning where you get two shoots and then you get a lot more congestion. Whereas this pruning technique is far more relevant for high quality and as far as I'm concerned. The other cool thing, it's a terrace vineyard, so it's not straight lines across. It's planted on the contour, and these rows face east to northeast, so it's a relatively cool location as well. Anyway, this is the beautiful Yoeman vineyard. I hope you get to try the wine. Yoeman Goldschmidt out here in the Alexander Valley.
This is the 2015. These were the rankings that they got. So it doesn't matter what you do. Even though we did these blind tastings all the time, when I go into restaurants, I always tell them the story about the big tasting that we did at CME, and then I pour 3 glasses, two of one wine and one of the other, and then I ask the buyers which 2 glasses are the same. I lose 80%, 85% of the buyers right then. They can't even tell you which 2 glasses are the same. For the 15% of the buyers that are left, I remove 1 glass for them, and then I ask them which one they prefer. 80% of them prefer the Yoeman. And then when I unveil it, they buy the Game Ranch. So every year, I take the wine, the Game Ranch, up $1 just to piss people off. So one day I'll sell them at the same speed. Anyway, sorry, I got 2015 up there. I meant 2016. 2016 is the current release, and this was a tasting that was done last year. All right, for those that aren't following me, the YouTube is the place to find me. I probably put up 3 more videos a day on YouTube, usually of wines that I'm tasting or places I'm at when I'm around. And normally I'm not around at this time. Normally July I'm always in the Southern Hemisphere, but because of COVID, we're all celebrating it being at home with our families. Isn't that cute? And then Facebook and Instagram is the other place you can find me a lot of the times. I don't use Twitter that much, but those are my contacts. We also have a tasting room. that we've just opened up. So if you happen to have some of your clients coming up, we would love to host them for you. We'll put on a special tasting for them. We will focus on what you want to show them, etc., etc. So if they do want to come out, we're up at the Pour House, which is on Dry Creek, and of course, I'm not sure if you guys I never asked you this, but you guys can also go up there and host them up there too if you've had clients coming into town, and we would certainly welcome that.
Nice.
Awesome, Nick.
So yeah, we've got a lot of things that we make, and the reason why I have a lot of wines is the main reason is because my goal is really started in 2008. In 2008, when I went out on my own, remember 2008 was a tough recession too, 2008, 2009. So a lot of these growers were let go, and so my job was to make wine from them and then try and find a route to market for them. And so, my main line, is Singing Tree, the Daughters, and Goldschmidt's. Okay, you guys have got the Fidelity, you got that. But these other wines like, Trig Point, Embankment, and Herald, Conspirator, The Verge. These are all wines that I make using growers that have been in trouble. So by buying these wines, what you're doing is you're supporting a lot of these guys that otherwise would not have an existence. And a lot of these growers are, they're only 10 acres or 20 tons or whatever. They're small growers, and large companies are not going to be bothered buying grapes from these people. I also think there's a huge evolution. I've always thought there's going to be a big evolution in wine. And I think because of this COVID thing, it's sped us up a bit, although if we get a vaccine quickly, it'll probably change again. But if you look to the old world, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, there's two forms of wineries. There's farm to gate and there's negociants. And I think, if I look at Napa Valley, 80% of all the vineyard land in Napa Valley is now owned by wineries. In the Alexander Valley, only 20% of that land is owned by wineries. So I think we're in a little bit of trouble in the Alexander Valley because it's very hard for these small mom and pop growers to find a route to market. So that's what I try to take on. I try to take on some of these smaller guys and try and find them a way to get through this quagmire of distribution. And you guys are like key to that, because the best thing about you guys is, of course, damn it, you know it. You live in Healdsburg, you know Alexander Valley, Dry Creek, Russian River, where we all live. And and another thing you can do is, if you see a trend coming, we've probably got it. So you don't feel you have to sell all my wines all the time. Just choose what you think works for you and etc. As far as new wines coming out, we, as you know, Pinot Noir is in a real trouble. And I've always resisted doing Pinot Noir, but I've been made a placement. I've been given a placement with a large retailer in Texas. And so we're going to come out with two Pinot Noirs. One will be called Fog's Edge. Have you guys seen Fog's Edge before?
No.
Chardonnay.
Yeah, it's a Chardonnay, but now we're going to make a Pinot Noir out. I had a bottle here. It's a great looking label for those who haven't seen it. Anyway, I can get you.
Yeah, we remember it.
Yeah, Fog's Edge. Anyway, there will be a Pinot in the Fog's Edge, and that'll be a little bit more expensive. That'll be single vineyard Russian River, and will retail at about 24, 25. And then we're going to do unfortunately, I have to, as a payoff, I have to do a Singing Tree Pinot, but it has to be line priced. I don't want you guys to sell that though, because it's going to be Sonoma County and not Russian River. And then we're going to, based on a lot of people have been hurting in New Zealand with Pinot Noir too. So we're going to come out with two other labels. One's called Shells and Bones, and another one's called Power Rock. Power is the name of the abalone in New Zealand with black meat. So we're going to do a couple of Pinots, and we can let you guys try. But the big one for us right now is the Conspirator. Have you seen that one? I think you've sold a little bit of it.
No, we haven't.
No.
Okay, this is the. Sorry, I'll be right there.
We'll wait here.
Yeah. This is the ones that for those. So this is the Conspirator. We make a red blend and a Cabernet. This is from Oakville, and typically around about the Hillary price or a little bit cheaper, but man, this thing is on fire on the East Coast. And this is the 2017 that we do.
Wow.
And then the Lawless, you guys have seen Lawless before?
No.
Mm-mm.
So Lawless is also, we don't normally release this because this is sold, Wegmans, which are a big retailer, they have two wines. One's called Frantic, which is, Frantic is now, of course, the harvest, and Lawless is 100% Cabernet. I did not choose the label. And then this is another thing that's doing really well. This is called the Verge. Verge is another Alexander Valley Cabernet that we do into a restaurant. Well, it was big in a restaurant chain. It's still being sold in a restaurant chain in Texas, just a little bit slower. But that's a pretty cool project too. So we have a lot of different things out there. And yeah.
I love it.
Great wines.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyway, any other questions that you may have? Well, you
This is
know,
really thorough.
Love you,
I'm always
Nick.
interested in new labels that have your pedigree, but new things we haven't offered to folks before. That's intriguing to me.
what I could do is I'll just stop recording here.